Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, and we are heading back to the tight and twisty streets of Macau to look at some more winners of the Macau Guia race as we head into the 80s and 90s. This is part 2 of our 3-part series, so make sure you check out the first video before this one and subscribe so you don't miss part 3 coming out later this week. The Macau Guia race really hit its stride in this period, whilst it was somewhat hard to find information and pictures on some of the early winners. That at least gets a little more easy as we move towards the millennium, much as it was with the Macau Grand Prix. So let's jump into this look at what happened to the Macau Guia race winners, part 2. 1985, Franco Brancatelli. The Italian attempted and failed to qualify for 3 Formula 1 Grand Prix for the Willie Carlson team in 1979, but went on to be successful in touring cars and sports cars. Emulating Tom Walkinshaw the year previous, Franco Brancatelli won the European Touring Car Championship and the Macau Guia race in 1985 for the Eggenberger Volvo team. He would go on to take wins in the World, Italian and British touring cars, as well as finishing second for Sauber at Le Mans in 1989. He would carry on in touring cars until the late 90s. 1986, Johnny Giotto, a motorcycle world champion who also raced in Formula 1, even scoring points for Theodore Racing. Johnny Giotto was an absolute star of touring cars in the 80s and 90s, winning races in the Italian, European and World Touring Car Championships. He finished second overall in DTM in 1990 and went on to win the Italian Touring Car Championship and 2 Super Tourenwagen Cups. Out of everyone who has won at Macau, he is the one driver who has the experience of all 4 categories and could have done a clean sweep of the Macau big races. And yet he only won the touring car race. 1987, Roberto Ravaglia. Going one better than Tom Walkinshaw and Franco Brancatelli, Roberto Ravaglia won the European and World Touring Car Championships, as well as the Macau Guia race, and he went on to win the DTM Championship as well. That along with 3 Italian Touring Car Championships, a second place in the Bathurst 1000, and a win in the British Touring Cars. He retired in the late 90s after over a decade of success with BMW. 1988, Alfred Hager. Didn't win much, but Alfred Hager did win the 1988 Macau Guia race. Kind of a journeyman racer who turned up in a lot of different touring car series. He had a couple of DTM wins and also took a win in the Super Tourenwagen Cup, but he was never a championship contender in any of those series. He did win the first ever Porsche Super Cup and retired from motorsport by the end of the 90s. 1989, Tim Harvey. The Ford Sierra Cosworth was the touring car of choice towards the end of the 80s, and Tim Harvey led home a Ford Sierra 123 at Macau, ahead of Andy Rouse and Hisashi Yokoshima. Tim Harvey was an ever-present in the British touring cars for the next decade, taking 16 wins and the 1992 championship. He also has wins in British GT, and won the Porsche Carrera UK Championship twice. He is now a commentator for ITV for the BTCC, and his voice has been a part of every British touring car fan's race weekend for a very long time. 1990, Masahiro Hoshi. The only win for a Nissan at Macau was of course a Skyline, driven by Japanese legend Masahiro Hoshi. He participated in a single Formula 1 race at Fuji in 1976 for the Kojima engineering team, but his biggest successes were in Japan, winning the precursor to Super Formula in 1980 and the Japanese Grand Touring Car title 3 times in 4 years, as well as the All Japan Sports Prototype Championship in 1990. He retired from racing in 2001, but has run teams in Super GT, which he still does to this day. 1991 and 1992, Emanuele Piro. The Italian was unlucky not to get a decent drive in Formula 1. After finishing 3rd 2 years running in International F3000, he got half a season with Benetton and 2 with Scuderia Italia, and that was his lot. But he finished 1991 with a win at Macau. He did it again in 1992 and then won 2 Italian Touring Car Championships and the Super Tourenwagen Cup, before switching to sports cars and winning the Le Mans 24-hour race 5 times. Finishing on the podium every year between 1999 and 2007, and he won 2 American Le Mans Series titles. Not a bad career. 1993, Charles Quan. The Hong Kong-based driver pulled off a massive shock by beating Joachim Winkelhock and Emanuele Piro to win the 1993 Guia race in a BMW M3. He was a decent touring car driver in Asia and moved to GT racing, winning the Porsche Carrera Cup Asia Series in 2003. He has since retired from racing. 1994 and 1998, Joachim Winkelhock. The German was a Formula 1 driver and British touring car champion before he took his first Guia race win in 1994. He also won the Asian Pacific Championship in 1995, the Super Tourenwagen Cup in 1995, the Guia race again in 1998, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1999. He was a race winner in the DTM, both old and new, and retired from racing in 2003, even though he was only 43. I think he had another 10 years in him minimum, but maybe only scoring a single point in DTM in 2003 put him off. 1995, Kelvin Bert. This must have been a shock win, although Kelvin Bert is a decent driver. I just would never think of him as Macau winningly good. But he was the 1993 British F3 champion and tested for both Jordan and Arrows in Formula 1, with Jordan apparently nearly giving him a race. It never happened, but Kelvin Bert ended up in touring cars. He raced for Ford in the BTCC in 1995, whilst winning the Guia race in a Toyota. He took another win with Volvo in 1996 and made sporadic appearances into the early 2000s. He won the 2001 British GT Championship and retired from racing a few years later. 1996, Frank Biela. Audi superstar Frank Biela won a lot of championships and races for the German marquee. The 1991 DTM champion had come close to the Super Tourenwagen Cup Championship in 1994 and 1995, but pivoted to the BTCC for 1996, winning the championship at the first attempt. He also won the Guia race in 1996 ahead of Brad Jones in another Audi, and would go on to win 5 24 Hours of Le Mans races and a boatload of wins in America for the Audi sports car program through the early and mid-2000s. There was also a win in the Touring Car World Cup and the French Championship, one of Audi's best ever drivers. 1997, Steve Soper. After hanging around touring cars for so long, even by 1997 he had been touring car racing for nearly 2 decades, I can't believe Steve Soper only won Macau once. Maybe he was busy. He was winning in the BTCC back in 1983, but also took wins in the European and World Touring Car Championships of the time. He was also a DTM race winner, Japanese Touring Car Champion, and has finished runner-up in the BTCC and Super Tourenwagen Cup. He finally won the Macau Guia race in 1997. It would prove to be his last great touring car race win, outside of a few wins in the American Le Mans Series. He retired after a disastrous BTCC campaign with Peugeot, ending in a big crash in 2001, though he does still occasionally turn up in historic racing. 1999, Michael Bartels. Like Joachim Winkelhock, Michael Bartels did sign for a Formula 1 team but never qualified. 4 attempts with Lotus in 1991. He also went on to touring cars but couldn't match his fellow German success. He did take a couple of wins in DTM, but outside of his Guia race win in 1999, didn't accomplish much until the mid-2000s, when he won the FIA GT Championship 3 times and owned his own sports car team. 2000, Patrick Heisman. At the end of the Super Touring era, the quality in the Guia race really dropped off. No more were names like Joachim Winkelhock, Steve Soper and Emanuele Piro winning the famous race. It was Patrick Heisman in a super production BMW, winning from Henry Lee Jr. in a Peugeot 306 and Simon Harrison in a Ford Focus. But Patrick Heisman was a decent driver, winning multiple Porsche Super Cup championships, a DTM race in 2001, and he even won his class at Le Mans in 1999. Shame everything he did was about to be overshadowed by 2001, 2002, 2003 and 2005, Duncan Heisman. Actually, to be fair, outside of Macau, Duncan Heisman didn't accomplish nearly as much as his brother. He was a Dutch touring car and GT champion who did a few world touring car races between 2005 and 2008. His final win at Macau was just his second race in the WTCC. He still turns up in random GT races till this day. 2004 and 2006, Jörg Müller. Our final driver for part 2 is Jörg Müller. This was also the final race at Macau. That wasn't part of the World Touring Car Championship until COVID came and ruined everything for a couple of years. The German is another who almost made it into Formula 1, winning the 1996 International F3000 Championship and testing for Sauber, Arrows and Williams. It never happened, sadly, and Müller moved on to touring cars. He finished runner-up in the European and World Touring Car Championship 3 times, and he also finished runner-up at Le Mans. He did at least take 2 wins in the Macau Guia race to go alongside his Grand Prix win in 1993. He saw out his career in Japan in Super GT, retiring after 2017. So they were all the drivers from 1985 to 2004 who won the Macau Guia race. Make sure you subscribe for part 3 as we move into the World Touring era, the brief COVID period, and the current age of TCR. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We will be back with more motorsport shortly. Thank you very much for watching and have a good one.